I found a pregnancy test between a package of buckwheat and a jar of coffee. It was lying there like a discarded cigarette, but after an inappropriate party. And like a fool, I first felt happy. I got home early from work. There was a fire at the warehouse, so we were all sent home. Usually, Lena is at home at this time. But today, silence. No smell of food, no melancholic songs under her breath. Not even traces of dissatisfaction. Just a turned-off TV and a perfectly folded blanket on the couch. In the kitchen, I reached for the coffee in the cupboard, and there it was. The white-pink test with 2 bold lines. Positive, just like my emotions in the first few seconds. I stood there, holding this plastic piece of fate, and foolishly smiled like a teenager who had just been told in secret that he was going to be a father. Then I looked at the calendar. Dates. Those damn numbers. I replayed every day in my head. The last business trip, the parties when we went to bed from opposite sides of bed, her constant not now, my silent okay. We hadn't had sex for almost a month, maybe a little less, but definitely not during the time that coincides with her pregnancy. A coldness filled my stomach, and not because of the coffee. Slowly, I put the test back, as if trying to turn back time. I sat at the table and tried to breathe. My head was empty, and my chest felt a strange tingling, like before a heart attack or a big, painful revelation. Lena came back late. Her jacket was on, her eyes tired, but without the usual anger. "Why are you home?" she asked without looking at me. "They let us go early," I replied, getting up to block her path to the cupboard. I silently took the test and placed it on the table. She froze. Only her eyes gave everything away. Fear, pity, anger. Then tears. She didn't even try to lie. "Are you happy?" she whispered. I didn't answer immediately. There was a lump in my throat. "Happy," she repeated. I nodded. I was, until I looked at the calendar. And at that moment, I saw how a person can fall apart in a few seconds. Her shoulders slumped like a teenager caught stealing. "Andre," she started, but I raised my hand. "I just want to understand. We haven't slept together, and you know..." Silence. Heavy, sticky, like a slow injection. "You never wanted children," she suddenly said. Not as an accusation, just as a fact, and as an excuse. "What?" I laughed, bitterly. "You didn't even try to talk to me." She sniffled. "You kept putting it off." "Not now. Later." And I couldn't wait anymore. "I'm 34, Andre, and you live like we're 20. I remained silent. I didn't know who I was now. A husband, a traitor, a fool? "Who is he?" I exhaled. She froze. "Tell me. I'm not an idiot. I just want to hear it." Lena closed her eyes and spoke a name. "Igor, my brother." In the morning, Lena behaved strangely. I had barely processed a confession when I saw how she was swallowing her emotions, holding them in, like trying to control a volcano that was about to erupt. She was never like this. Lena was emotional, open, everything with her was clear, but now it was something else. She refused the wine when I offered. She used to always have a glass after a tough day, even if just to relax. But not today. "What's wrong with you?" I couldn't stay silent anymore. This was a normal day, and I couldn't help but notice how her hands trembled as she poured herself some water. She turned to me, and I saw something in her eyes that had always been foreign to me. Distance, uncertainty. It was like she was here, but not really here. Like she was trying to be strong for someone else, not for herself. "Don't, Andre," she said quietly, barely audible, but her voice was filled with irritation. And that's when something inside me snapped. "What don't you want? Are you trying to tell me everything is fine?" My words came out sharper than I intended. Lena lifted her gaze again, but this time it wasn't contemplative. It was a direct confrontation. She got up and started pacing around the room, like she was looking for the right words to explain everything. "You don't understand. You don't want to understand," she said, stopping by the window. I stepped closer. I just couldn't understand. Why had she stayed silent all these months? Why didn't she tell me about the pain she was going through? Why couldn't she just speak to me directly? Why, for God's sake, had she waited so long? Lena, I don't understand. Why didn't you tell me earlier that you wanted a child? Why couldn't you just talk to me? My words were almost breaking through my teeth. She shook her head, like she was trying to calm herself down, then looked at me with eyes that made me realize she wasn't ready to keep this silence any longer. You never wanted children, her voice trembled, and I felt her fist clenching. And I already knew this wasn't just words. This was pain. Her pain. What do you mean? I took a step back. It felt like I was hearing rejection again, like I had done something wrong again, like I had missed something obvious. You always put it off. Always. And I couldn't take it anymore. She exploded. Lena couldn't hide her indignation anymore, her feelings that with each passing year, I was becoming something else for her, something that couldn't be the most important thing in her life. She exploded again, no longer holding herself back. I want a child. Andre, I want a child right now. I can't keep living in this and wait for you to decide if maybe now is the right time for it. All these years I lived for you, and all I wanted was to simply be a mom. Her words hung in the air, and I felt how they tore at my heart. Had I really dragged this out for so long? Had I been so closed off that I didn't notice how she was suffering? But then a voice rang in my head. What have you done to change this? I didn't know what to say. The truth, I couldn't. I had put her in this situation. I was the one who kept postponing, who refused. She was right, and I didn't believe it. Silence. Only her heavy breathing and the silence in the room. Lena fell onto the couch, hiding her face in her hands. I wanted to approach her, to embrace her, but I couldn't. All these years, I thought my duty to her was simply to be. But what if that wasn't what she wanted? The silence dragged on endlessly. I didn't know how to escape this labyrinth. And even more, I didn't know if I wanted to. Andre couldn't shake off that evening. Time moved on, and Lena seemed to be trying to get back to normal. But something inside him stayed broken. He couldn't stop thinking about how his brother had always been around. Igor, the younger brother who always seemed so carefree, always laughing, always full of life. He was always at their place, even when Andre was at work. The little things that used to go unnoticed now pressed on him with weight. He remembered how just last Saturday, Igor had shown up again when Andre came home early from work. Lena had been cooking dinner, and the three of them sat down together. Igor was joking around, laughing, telling his usual stories. Back then, it all seemed harmless. After all, they were family. What could possibly be wrong? But now, just a few days later, as every thought spiraled into doubt, Andre recalled a moment, a random conversation, one that hadn't mattered back then. He remembered that party, how Igor was there, but not really there. He had been standing in the hallway, near the living room door, when Andre heard Lena speaking on the phone. A random moment he couldn't control. Back then, her words had seemed unimportant. But now, as it all resurfaced, he felt a chill settle over him. There had been laughter, and then sudden silence. A soft, barely audible whisper, and silence again. Something in Lena's voice, her tone, made him realize that what had happened was much more than a bad decision. Are you sure about this? She had said. Do you really want to go through with it? Igor had responded, but Andre hadn't caught the words, and that frustrated him more than anything. Why hadn't he noticed something was off? Even that laugh, the one he used to think was so normal, now felt foreign. Do you remember what I told you? Igor had said. You remember I've always been there for you? I just want to help. Andre stood up from the couch and walked to the window. His heart was pounding. He had always believed that Igor would be there for him no matter what, that his brother had his back in any situation. But what if that wasn't true? What if all of it had been part of something else? The more he thought, the more everything inside him began to crumble. The trust, the closeness, it was gone. Lena and Igor had spoken in secret, had made decisions behind his back, had played some twisted game in which he was nothing but a pawn. I did it for you, Igor's voice echoed in his head. But what exactly had he done? Andre turned and looked at Lena. She was sitting in the corner, eyes down, silent. He still hadn't said anything meaningful to her, just that he didn't understand. And it was true. But no matter how much he tried to silence it, the feeling inside him was louder than reason. He knew Lena's tears were real. He knew her words were honest. But how could he trust her now? He stepped toward her and placed a hand gently on her shoulder. Lena flinched, like her entire world was collapsing. It wasn't love. It wasn't trust. It was just a feeling too big to hold in. But what now? How does one live with this truth? With the knowledge that his brother, his own flesh and blood, was now as much a stranger as anyone else? Andre didn't know. But he knew one thing for sure. The three of them were entangled in this now. And no one would walk away unchanged. Andre stood by the window for a long time, unable to approach her. The silence of the room was suffocating, and even the air felt heavy from the tension. Lena sat on the couch, trying to hide her tears, but she couldn't. He saw her shoulders tremble with every stifled sob, her hands clenched into fists as if that could somehow hold her together. It was painful to watch, but even more painful was feeling her pain and not being able to understand it. Lena, his voice came out quieter than he'd expected. He felt the words get stuck in his throat. She didn't answer. Her eyes squeezed shut. All he saw was her mouth trying to hold onto that same calm mask she'd worn for years. But now it was cracking, like a piece of old porcelain. His own heart clenched. And despite all the hurt, he knew they had to talk. They had to let it out. He couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. Couldn't you have just told me? He asked, his voice shaking slightly. Why did you hide this from me, Lena? Why didn't you come to me if having a child meant so much to you? Lena lifted her tear-stained eyes, but said nothing. He could see she was holding back something massive, something that had been bottled up inside her for far too long. And then, in that quiet moment, something inside her broke. She looked at him with eyes filled with pain and desperation. You don't understand, Andre. You have no idea what it's like to be a woman who waits month after month, hoping and never becoming a mother. You don't know what it's like when everyone around you starts asking why you still don't have kids, why you haven't handled that yet. Her voice shook with every word, each one slicing to the air like a blade. Andre froze. He didn't know how to respond. He now saw the despair in her, saw that her life hadn't been easy either. But he didn't understand what had driven her to go so far. Lena, you could have just talked to me, told me you wanted a child. We could have figured something out. I didn't realize it meant so much to you. I didn't realize you were suffering. She closed her eyes again, and fresh tears streamed down her cheeks. This was real. This was raw. I didn't want to cheat on you, Andre. I just want a child. I couldn't wait anymore. I couldn't keep pretending it wasn't important to me. Igor offered a solution, and I said yes. That's all it was. He didn't ask for anything, didn't expect anything from me. He just helped. That's it. He just helped. Her words hit him like a punch to the chest. He felt the world collapse around him. Everything they'd built, the life they had, it all suddenly felt like a lie. Igor, his brother, the one he trusted the most. Igor, he whispered. You were with him. How could you, Lena? She looked at him again, and in her eyes there was something new, shame, bitterness, a pain she could no longer hide. I'm not trying to justify it, Andre, but you need to understand, I didn't do this for pleasure. I did it because I was scared. Scared that you didn't understand me, that you weren't listening. I didn't know what else to do. Igor offered this as a way out, as the only way I could feel like a woman again, like a future mother. I didn't know it would come to this. But when I found out I was pregnant, I knew it was my decision, my step, and I don't regret it. Andre just stood there, speechless. His head was spinning from all he had just heard. He realized that Lena hadn't done this out of malice or even betrayal, but out of deep personal pain. She had reached her limit. She had been willing to do anything just to become a mother, but even so, he couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. How could she turn to his brother? You should have told me, Lena. We could have figured it out. I didn't know how badly you wanted this. I always thought we had time, that we were on track. But now I don't know. She stood up from the couch and walked slowly toward him. Her hands trembled as she placed one gently on his shoulder, but he still felt a vast chasm between them. I don't know what to do either, Andre. But I hope that one day you'll understand me. Understand why I did what I did. We both made mistakes. You and me. Her words hung in the air, and Andre had no idea what came next. He didn't know what would happen to them, to their marriage. But one thing was certain. Nothing would ever be the same again. Andre had no idea what to expect from Igor. His brother had always been there, always smiling, always cracking a joke, always offering a helping hand. But now, after everything Andre knew, he couldn't comprehend how Igor had become part of the story. This wasn't just a mistake or a moment of weakness. It was a conscious decision. Igor knew exactly what he was doing. He knew what line he was crossing. Andre couldn't believe he was actually going to see him. Questions swirled in his mind. How can I even look him in the eye? And what will he say? But the question that hurt the most was, what do I feel? Pain, rage, betrayal, disappointment. He couldn't find the right words to describe what was tearing him apart inside. He went to see Igor without a plan, without even taking a moment to breathe. He just went. Why? Maybe to feel like he still had some control left, to stop this from destroying everything. His relationship with his brother, his family, himself. Igor greeted him the same way he always did, with a smile. But this smile wasn't the same. It was tight, forced, like a mask that didn't quite fit. He hadn't been expecting Andre, but he knew Andre would come. It was like a scene from a bad movie, the kind where the hero walks into the lion's den, knowing what he'll find. Andre noticed Igor didn't even offer him a seat, just gave a slight nod, silently inviting him in, like this was his space now. I wasn't sure you'd actually come, Igor said, sitting on the edge of the table. But here you are. Andre didn't say a word. He had no idea how to start. His brother had always been so calm, so sure of himself, with that way of making everyone around him feel safe. But now that confidence felt fake. Andre felt his chest tighten with resentment. Igor, how could you? The words finally escaped. Igor sighed and rubbed the back of his neck. He wasn't ready for a deep talk, but he knew he couldn't avoid it either. Andre, you've always been different. Calm. Serious. I admired you for that. But sometimes you didn't see what was right in front of you. Lena, she couldn't wait anymore. She wanted a child. You kept postponing everything, and I saw how it was tearing her apart. You couldn't see it, but I could, so I helped. Andre felt something break inside. He couldn't even tell what emotion was hitting him harder. First came the cold rage, then the crushing emptiness. Lena, his wife, the woman he had built a life with, had turned his brother. Not him, his brother. You just helped? That's what you're calling it. Andre asked, his voice dripping with sarcasm. You did what I didn't dare do, and you did it for her? That's what you're telling me. Igor looked around the room, then back at him. His eyes were calm, but that calm had no warmth. He wasn't going to apologize. He wasn't going to regret it. He had done what he believed was right. Yes, Andre, I did what you never would. I did it for her. She couldn't wait anymore. She couldn't keep living in fear. You know how hard it was for her. We all make mistakes. I didn't want her to suffer. You couldn't see that. I could. Andre felt his pulse hammering in his ears. He was trapped between his brother and his wife, between his truth and a version of reality he couldn't accept. Igor had always been just a step ahead, always knew what to say, what to do. But this cost too much. For both of them. You don't even realize what you've done, Andre said, barely holding back his fury. You destroyed everything. Everything I thought I had, everything I believed in. And now you sit here, calling help? Igor stood up and walked a few steps away from the table. He paused, as if trying to find the right words. Then he exhaled and said, I didn't expect you to understand. I hoped you might. But no, I knew you wouldn't. You're always so controlled, so strong, but never open to the real, simple things that matter to people. I couldn't just stand by and watch her suffer. I knew you wouldn't do anything. I could. That was it. Andre realized there was no way back. Igor had made his choice. And now he stood there, fully convinced he'd done the right thing. Andre's chest ached. Not just from a betrayal, but from the realization that his brother hadn't only crossed a line. He had stepped into a space that wasn't his. Igor had always been close, but now that closeness was poisoned. Andre stood up and walked out without saying another word. He knew he would never look at Igor the same way again. Whatever was between them, it was broken. Andre sat in his car, hands wrapped tightly around the steering wheel. Outside, the world was gray. Rain tapped against the windshield in rhythmic, cold drops. Everything beyond the glass looked distant and unfamiliar. He knew he had to move forward, but something held him in place. This moment had become a turning point in his life. He didn't know where to go. Stay or leave. Love or hate. Forget or remember. A therapist. That's where he went. Because he couldn't find a way out on his own. He had no confidence left, no strength to talk to Lena, and no words to explain what he felt. He was afraid to admit, even to himself, that his life was broken. He didn't know how to move forward, how to make a decision that suddenly seemed impossible. Andre, how are you feeling today? Her voice was soft and gentle, almost calming. She sat across from him, and he felt oddly out of place, like he didn't belong in that chair, in that space. He didn't know how to begin. I don't know, he said quietly, glancing at her. I can't figure out what to do. Everything is a mess. I feel like I'm falling apart. How am I supposed to live with this? What do I even do with all this pain? She looked at him with a calm, understanding expression. She could have offered comforting words or easy answers, but she didn't. She knew only he could find those answers. What is it that troubles you most? She asked gently. Andre fell silent, sorting through the storm of memories that had brought him here. He thought about Lena, about her smile, about the day she first told him she wanted to be a mother. He thought about how he had felt back then, in that moment of love, when everything seemed so full of hope. How wrong he had been. He kept replaying the moments in his mind. How many times he dismissed her, delayed the conversations about children, thinking it could all wait. He had lost her. He had lost his confidence. He had lost what he believed was his life. He didn't know where to find the strength to begin again. I keep seeing her smile, he said, closing his eyes. I remember how she told me she wanted a child, how her eyes lit up with that dream, and I couldn't give it to her. I kept postponing. And now it's all gone. Igor, I can't even look at him. He did what I couldn't, and it hurts. But what hurts even more is that I don't know if I can forgive her or myself. I don't know what to do. The therapist didn't interrupt. She let him speak, and he kept going. I feel torn in two. I love her. I really do. But I can't get past this. I don't know how. Do I stay? Try to fix this? Or do I walk away and start over? Or maybe I've already lost everything. He felt the tears rising but didn't let them fall. He didn't want to show weakness. He just wanted the pain to stop. But deep down, he knew he had to fight through this. He had to make a choice. The therapist tilted her head slightly, as if weighing his words. She waited a few seconds before she spoke, letting his thoughts settle. Andre, you keep thinking about what needs to be done. But what about what you want? It's natural to seek answers from others. But in the end, only you can make the choice that's right for you. You say you love her. But what kind of love is it if it leads only to pain and destruction? Andre went quiet. He didn't know how to respond. He didn't know what the right decision was. He didn't know what would be best for him, for Lena, for the child. This is hard, he finally whispered. Andre sat motionless in his chair, his eyes locked somewhere in the distance, as if hoping to find answers in the empty air. He didn't know what to say. He didn't know how to react to Lena's words, which had just pierced straight through his soul. Everything she'd said echoed in his mind, bouncing against the walls of his thoughts, making his heart pound faster and harder. Lena stood in front of him, her fingers nervously clutching the edge of her dress. She couldn't meet his eyes, but she kept speaking anyway, lost in her thoughts like she needed to get it all out before she collapsed under the weight of it. What she was saying wasn't what he had expected. Not at all. Andre, I had a choice. Her voice was quiet, but each word came out with clarity. But I made it without you. I knew you wouldn't understand. I knew you'd stall again, and I couldn't wait anymore. He felt something tighten in his chest, like a rope pulling inward. He thought he'd heard everything already. He thought she might admit it was a mistake, that maybe they both lost control, that she never meant to lie. But what she was saying now wasn't about mistakes. It was about will, about intent. She'd made a choice, and she had made it alone. You made that choice without me, he repeated, struggling to make sense of her words. You decided this on your own, and now I'm supposed to be okay with it? Lena went silent. Her eyes welled up with tears, but she didn't look away. Andre could see her pain. But within that pain, there was something else, something he couldn't quite understand. I thought you'd understand. You always said we should walk the same path, stay in step with each other. But what if you were never ready to walk it at all? Her voice was trembling. I couldn't sit around waiting for you to maybe be ready. I want to be a mother, Andre. I want a child. I need to be a mother. And I couldn't pretend anymore. Igor offered his help. He said he would support me. And I accepted it. That was our decision, not yours. Each word hit Andre like a hammer. He felt them striking his chest, one after another. She had done this. They had done this without him. And now she stood there, saying it was their choice, as if he didn't matter at all. You thought you had the right? He asked, his voice growing cold. He didn't even recognize himself. The words were coming on their own, laced with hurt. You thought you could take everything into your own hands? Without even asking me. Lena didn't answer right away. Her lips trembled, but she kept going. There was no turning back now. Everything she was saying, she had been holding it in for too long. You always needed control. You always needed to be the one who decides when and how. But I couldn't live like that anymore, she whispered. I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't want to betray you. I just couldn't wait forever. I had to make a decision. And yes, I made it on my own. Because I had to. Because you never would. Andre stood up, his body trembling with rage and disbelief. His eyes burned with a kind of fury he hadn't felt in years. You controlled everything, didn't you? His voice was louder now, sharper. You didn't think about what it would do to me, about what it would mean. You just went ahead and did it. You made me part of your plan. And I never had a say. Lena closed her eyes, wiping away the tears with the back of her hand. Her heart was breaking all over again, but she understood what he meant. And yet, she also knew this hadn't been about cruelty. It had been about survival, about her dream, about something she had carried deep inside her for years. I didn't want to hurt you, she said again, quieter this time. I didn't want to cause pain, but I couldn't keep waiting, Andre. I just couldn't. I made a choice. Maybe you see it as betrayal, but for me, it was the only way to become who I am, to be a mother. I didn't want to keep lying to myself. Andre stood there, unable to speak. Everything she'd just said spun around in his mind. She said it was her choice, her right. But what did that mean for them? Was there still a them? Could they still call this a marriage? Could they go back to anything that resembled what they once had? He didn't know. He was surrounded by the ruins of something that used to feel unshakable. And though part of him wanted to walk away, another part held him in place. Because deep down he knew this wasn't just about choice. It was about control. And somewhere along the way, he'd lost his. Andre rose from the chair and walked toward the window. The silence in the house was painfully familiar. Lena had gone to the bedroom, leaving him alone with his thoughts. He didn't know what to think anymore, but one thing was clear. Igor had crossed a line, and this wasn't just a misstep or a lapse in judgment. It was something deeper, something that would leave a permanent scar on everything between them. Igor hadn't shown up yesterday, but today Andre could feel it. He knew that moment was coming. That confrontation was inevitable. He knew his brother would act like nothing happened, just like he always had. Always calm, always confident. But this time was different. This time, Andre could feel it. Igor was moving in, claiming space that wasn't his to claim. When Igor did arrive, he didn't say a word. He just stood in the doorway, looking straight at him. No greetings, no apologies, no smile. The man who had once been his brother now looked like a stranger, or worse, an enemy. Andre could tell Igor had grown comfortable in this new role. It suited him a little too well. The shadow figure, always nearby, always ready to help. But now, he was no longer in the background. He had stepped into their life, and done so without hesitation. "You're back," Andre said with a cold smirk. "I see you've decided not to back off, just like Dad." Igor stepped forward, unbothered, unflinching, as if Andre hadn't just compared him to someone they both swore they'd never become. "I'm not here to fight," Igor said, his tone calm but firm. "I want to be close. I think I can help. Lena needs support. You don't understand what she's going through." Andre could feel the fire building inside. The man standing in front of him wasn't just his brother anymore. He was a man trying to take his place, acting like he had a right to be there, to decide what Lena needed, what they needed. Andre clenched his fists. "You don't think you've helped enough already?" His voice trembled, low and full of warning. "What is it, Igor? You trying to replace me? You really think you have a place in this family now?" Igor didn't blink. He wasn't fazed. His expression was the same as always, composed, steady, too steady. He stepped closer, not as a brother, not even as a rival, but as someone who convinced himself he belonged there, that he had a place beside Lena. And Andre? Just an obstacle in the way. "I'm not replacing anyone, Andre," Igor said, his eyes sharp, unwavering. "I just want things to be real. She wants a family. You weren't giving her that. I can." Those words, "I can," cut through him like a knife. Andre stood frozen, staring at this man who used to be his closest friend, now declaring himself as Lena's savior. This wasn't support. This wasn't help. This was intrusion, a takeover. "You've lost your mind," Andre snapped, rising to his feet. His eyes burned with fury. "You think you can take what's mine? That you can be someone you're not? What? You're playing father now. You're my brother, not some hero in her story." Igor stayed calm, as if the storm in front of him meant nothing. That composure, that infuriating self-control, only fueled Andre's rage. "You're exaggerating," Igor said, taking a step back. "I'm just trying to be there for her. For both of you. Why can't you see that?" Andre was at his breaking point. All he ever wanted was to be there for Lena, to make things work, to be the man she needed. But now, with Igor hovering like a ghost that wouldn't go away, everything he cared about felt under siege. "I don't need your help, Igor," he exploded. "I can handle this myself. You don't get to assign yourself this role. This isn't your story. This isn't your place. You're not my brother anymore. You're my enemy." Igor said nothing. He stood there, his face blank, his presence like ice in the room. Whatever confidence he had a moment ago, it was gone. Maybe now, finally, he realized just how far he'd gone. Andre, flushed with anger, turned and walked away. His body trembled with the weight of everything he was holding in. One thing was certain now. This wasn't just about Lena. This wasn't just about the baby. Igor had taken something more than trust. He had taken his place. Andre sat slumped in his armchair, drained and shattered. His thoughts cut through him like razors, tearing him apart from the inside. He couldn't find peace, couldn't find rest. Every morning began with the same question, what now? But no answer ever came. His life felt like a black hole, swallowing everything. He didn't know how to handle Lena's decision, or the fact that his own brother had become part of this chaos. Igor hadn't just been there. He had started to fill in for him. Not physically, not officially, but presence alone was enough. Enough to shift the balance. Enough to make Andre feel like a stranger in his own life. That evening, as the weight in his chest became unbearable, he stepped outside to get some air. The sky was low, the air sharp, and the streets were empty. He ended up sitting on a worn-out bench near his building, the one where old Mr. Dalton usually sat, a widower for more than a decade. The man spent his days revisiting memories, offering unsolicited life advice in between coughs and sighs. His eyes held more years than words, and his silence often spoke louder than anyone else's noise. "Something's eating you up, son," the old man asked, his voice rough but not unkind. "What are you looking for in there?" He tapped lightly at his own chest. Andre didn't know what to say. He just sat down beside him, staring ahead. "It's nothing," he muttered. Just feels like everything's falling apart. Mr. Dalton nodded, like he'd heard this 1,000 times before. He didn't push, didn't ask questions, just let the silence hang between them, until he finally spoke again, this time slower, more deliberate. "You know," he said, eyes fixed on some distant point across the street, "you can still be a father, even if you're not the father." Andre turned, confused. "What are you talking about?" The old man didn't flinch. His voice grew steadier. "I've seen a lot in my time, and I've learned this. Fatherhood has very little to do with blood. It's not biology. It's presence, strength, loyalty. It's being the one who stays, even when it's hard. Anyone can make a child, but being there, that's what makes you a father." Andre sat with the words, unsure if he wanted to accept them. Could it really be that simple? Or that difficult? "You think I should just forgive my brother?" he asked, his tone still sharp, unsure. Mr. Dalton shook his head with a faint smile, as if to say you're missing the point. "No, forgiveness doesn't work like that. You only forgive once it stops feeling like something to forgive. But this isn't about your brother. This is about the kid, about her, about whether you're going to walk away or show up." Andre stared at the ground. The weight on his chest hadn't disappeared, but something inside had shifted. The words didn't give him answers, but they offered something else. A crack of light through the fog, a direction, if not a destination. "You don't need a title," the old man added. "You don't need to be anything. Just be there. When it counts. That's all that matters." Andre looked up at him, and for the first time in days, he didn't feel like screaming. He didn't feel like collapsing. Maybe the path ahead was still blurred, but at least he wasn't standing in place anymore. He nodded. "Thanks," he said quietly, rising from a bench. Mr. Dalton gave a slight wave, already looking away again. "Just don't wait too long," he murmured. Andre walked home, the night air cooler now, clearer somehow. Maybe everything was still broken. Maybe he'd never fix it. But one thing had become clear. It wasn't about who the child came from. It was about who would stay. Andre sat in the small exam room, his eyes fixed on the ultrasound screen. The doctor pressed buttons, making calm, practice comments, but Andre wasn't listening. All he could focus on was that glowing image in front of him. The baby. A baby. His baby, or at least not his in the way people usually mean it. But did it matter now? He reached out instinctively, as if trying to touch the tiny shape flickering on the screen. It felt unreal. Distant. Fragile. "There you go," the doctor said, pointing at the monitor. "Everything looks perfect. The baby's developing normally." That was all Andre needed to hear. All he wanted to know. Lena sat next to him, her hands clutched tightly around her purse, her eyes unfocused, distant. She was here, but not really here. Between them still lay a thick silence. Their lives had changed, suddenly, irreversibly. What once was clear was now buried in fog. It felt like everything was on hold, like they were suspended in a moment between decisions, unsure whether to move forward or let go completely. The doctor left the room, leaving them alone with the screen still humming softly in front of them. "Well," Lena said finally, her voice nearly flat, "that's it, then. We can be happy now, right?" Andre looked at her. Her eyes were tired, her face worn. There was hope in her voice, but it was a hope built on fear, on uncertainty. He knew she wasn't really asking. She was testing if he still had anything left to give. He didn't answer right away. This wasn't the kind of moment you fix with words like, "It's okay," or "We'll figure it out." Because maybe it wasn't okay. And maybe they wouldn't. "Lena, he started, then faltered. His voice broke halfway. He didn't know what he felt. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. And it wasn't peace either. But it also wasn't hate. Somewhere in the middle, there was something. A flicker of warmth. A possibility. Lena looked up at him, lips trembling. She was waiting. But she wasn't expecting much. She knew he couldn't unhear everything, couldn't forget, couldn't erase what had been done. But she also knew he hadn't walked away yet. "Andre, can you decide something? Do you want to be here? Do you want to try?" Her voice cracked on the last word, and that was what undid him. Andre looked back at the screen. The baby shifted slightly. A tiny motion. A tiny life. Pushing his way into the world. Into their world. He took a breath. It felt deeper than any he'd taken in weeks. I don't know what's going to happen, he said quietly, but firmly. I don't know if I can forget. Or fully forgive. But I know one thing. I want to try. I want to try being here. Lena let out a soft sob and leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. He felt her shaking, trying to hide it. He didn't say anything else. Just held her. He didn't know what their future looked like. He didn't know what the child would mean to him, or what kind of relationship they'd have. But he knew he couldn't leave. Not like this. Not now. And once more, the words of the old man returned to him. You can be a father, even if you're not the father. He didn't fully understand what that meant until this moment. It wasn't about DNA. It wasn't about bloodlines or pride. It was about showing up, about standing there when it mattered most, about staying, even when it hurt. As they left the clinic together, Lena gripping his arm a little tighter than usual, Andre felt a familiar uncertainty rise again. What comes next? What does it mean to rebuild from this? He didn't know, but he was there, and for now that was enough.